Welcome to this new episode of the County. Today we shall talk about the description of the world by Marco Polo, and more precisely, the city of Baghdad, as well as a few funny stories afterwards. So, while on his Marco Polo, around the 13th century, went around traveling, saw a lot of stuff, and he also tried to get as much information from various travelers as he could from the places neighboring those where he went, and thus he amassed quite a nice amount of information, and he tried to be as pertinent and accurate as possible at the time, which is quite a nice exploit and a nice effort. So, going back to the matter at hand, the main subject are the sciences taught in the Baghdad University. Now, in that time, in his book, he called it Bodak. It is most likely due to some translation problems or possibly to some pronunciation changes. Nonetheless, several things were taught at its university, and it's in the chapter 25 of the first book. So, back to the things taught. Of course, there was, as he calls it, Mahomet's Law, which is basically the Muslim theology. So, nothing too extravagant. It's what you'd expect from the Baghdad University. They also teach physics, which once again, university, pretty standard stuff. There was also philosophy and astronomy. Now we're getting a bit further away from more regular things to be taught, but you know, it's still really standard and normal stuff, so nothing too extravagant. Watching the stars, studying the old Greek pedophiles and whatnot. Everything normal up to now. Then we go into the weird stuff. Two of the other things that have been learned are necromancy and geomancy. Now, most of you are thinking, okay, what did they do? Did they try to learn to raise the dead, create stone elementals, or become earthbenders? No. It's just fancy divination by trying to talk to rocks or dead people. But, if you're doing a fantasy setting based on Baghdad, go on. Have your fun and your white stuff with geomancy and necromancy, and you can say, oh, it's just a fantasy version of something that was done. So now instead of bullshitting people by pretending to talk to the dead, now they actually raise army of the dead. In fact, Siege of occur in 1291. There were already 11 to 1, but what if it was only after the Crusaders had already defeated untold legions of undead? Now suddenly fantasy crusades become a lot stranger and yet quite interesting. Dude, the historic stuff is still pretty neat. And go watch a crusade story. But nonetheless, that is not all that they taught in that university. They also taught physiognomy. Physiognomy in French. What is that, may you ask? It is the pseudoscience of determining someone's personality trait according to their physical traits. In other words, it's the pseudo-scientific way of saying, I don't like you, you're an asshole. or more precisely, I don't like your face, you are an asshole. So yeah, pretty much. No, it's not a study of the appositism in certain species like frogs that have fancy colors, same with mushrooms and carens, but no, that physiognomy is really more absurd than that. And yeah, the pseudoscience of saying I don't like you, you are an asshole, along with talking to the dead, because why not? Also, come to think of it, necromancy and astronomy combined together, we're getting close to going to the Lovecraftian territory, which kind of fits since the Necronomicon was translated from whatever original language it was in by an Arab according to the Lovecraftian lore, but nonetheless. So as alone, these stories are don't make a video in itself. There's a few more anecdotes. First of all, Nestorians. What are Nestorians? They're the Christians of the Middle and Far East. So they're mainly a certain subsection that split off early on. There even were some of them as far as China. Marco Polo met with them, learned about them, and lots of things like that. He seemed to have quite a lot of them in his esteem for a number of reasons, and there we see a lot of nuance that most people, being like prejudiced against the medieval period, do not think. It's the nuance on what makes a good and a bad heretic. And it's explained in the book by Marco Polo is that, and the idea is that technically, according to the etymology of the word heretic, Nestorians would technically be heretics. But it is through no fault of their own. They just never had a contact with the Catholic Church and therefore could not be blamed. And apparently that from a few stories he has, it seems that God watch over them too. So yeah, they might technically be heretics according to the etymology as far as he could tell, but are they in fact bad people? Not at all. So yeah, that's according to the neutral definition of heretic. So no, they did not deserve an exterminatus to the face. So that's a thing. Also, for Sugar, according to his book, now some people may question that, but nonetheless, according to his book, the Crusaders were the one to pretty much invent white sugar, close enough to what we know, where beforehand it was only brown sugar, and apparently it got so popular that as far as China, they used this technique that was really appreciated. Now, one thing we do know from other sources, it's that by bringing in mills and building mills everywhere, the Crusaders did improve on the refining sugar. They did invent white sugar, it is more questionable, but they did do some improvement. And there were techniques that were known and somewhat the same from the Holy Land to China. Okay, you see me backwards, so it should say from the Holy Land to China, so you can see it. So yeah, there was that. One more funny story: Desert Wind. Back in the day, when they did not have as far advanced technology as we do now, there's a certain place of the world where at night the wind blows really strangely and makes some really spooky noises. These noises were thought to be ghosts. He encountered said noises. They did not have an explanation at the time, and unlike Blue from Overly Sarcastic Production, who did a really shitty video on Marco Polo, yes, without any manner to know what it actually was, and that it was just wind because of how different it sounded from other wind. It did sound like ghosts. So that, and then in China, he encountered several, and also while getting information from all around the world, he did encounter some creatures such as a orange lion with black stripes, so a tiger that he thought was a lion due to the similarity to what he knew at that moment, trying to explain this for people, because in Europe they knew what a lion was, a tiger not so much. Similarly, for a rhinoceros, he didn't call it a unicorn, so a unicorn that was kind of fat and muscular and woolly, because these were woolly rhinoceroses. So yeah, these were unicorns from the way he understood them. So according to him, unicorn, rhinoceros, same thing. Canon now. And then another animal that got confusion were crocodiles. So in China, back in the day, there were a special variant of crocodile that was quite long. I don't think they still exist for a number of sad reasons, but it does describe them as snakes with a really flat snout and small legs and a more rectangular, describe the crocodile shape. You read the description, you see a crocodile, but he calls it a snake because he goes from what he got. And then final story, as he went back to the on his way back via the, he did manage to, or was it in Forest, but nonetheless he did going back to the sea in the south. Nonetheless, between what he observed and the information he got for numerous sailors on number of things, including the famous rock bird. So those who played the Heroes of Might and Magic 3, yes, the big bird from that Bastion's house. But going back at hand, in the numerous islands in the Indian Ocean, apparently that there were cynocephaly. What are cynocephaly, you may ask? These are dog-headed people, or if you prefer, the really diet version of Anubis army, because they're not that cool, at least not yet. But yeah, apparently there were dog-headed people. So once again, if you want to do that at that fantasy setting, you've got some historical precedent. It's most likely based on some misinterpretation, but nonetheless, it's still funny to think about and something interesting that could be used. On that, it will be all for now, and I think I succeeded in my objective to not say the word end 100 times like I did last time. So on this, farewell, and until the next episode.